Have you ever been in a group of people and you were expecting it was going to be a fun adventure, but then it actually turned out to be a terrible grind because you were just kind of waiting around for everyone else to figure out what they want to do, and then the things they actually wanted to do were not very fun, and it wound up just feeling like a waste of time. And you thought, man, I could have had a much better fun by myself. And you don't want to say that, because the idea of being around other people is great. It's wonderful and it's fulfilling to have people that you're spending quality time with. And yet, so often, that's not really the experience. Maybe you went to a destination, a city that you haven't been to before, and if it was just you by yourself, you would have went out and explored some interesting place and gone and had some fun and taken a lot of pictures. But then, because you weren't alone, you were just sort of the captive audience of everybody else. And everyone else around you was more of a limiting factor than anything else. A good example of this would be, for me, I like to take pictures. So if I'm walking down the street or really anywhere, especially if I have a good camera with me, I always kind of have an eye for photography opportunities. And I couldn't tell you how many times I have been with somebody else and I've thought, I'd like to take a picture of that. But, I can't really easily stop, because if I stop to take a picture and get just the right angle and all of that sort of thing, now I'm inconveniencing the time of somebody else. And even if they're accommodating, I'm not going to actually get that good shot, because I'm trying to do it in a hurry, in a way that is considerate of the time of that other person who's waiting for me to get done so that we can move on. And that is kind of a good example of how maybe in gaming, multiplayer experiences sound like a really great idea, but they're not. And as much as we want to enjoy them, they actually are very limiting. They're limiting in games because if everyone has to be able to progress together in a shared environment, then there's just certain things you can't do from the perspective of trying to offer a sandbox experience to the player. For example, in Valheim, I can build a house wherever I want. It's truly a crafting, building sandbox. In a game like New World, I can gather resources. There's a lot of things I can do in the game, but I ultimately can't do anything that really changes anyone else's user experience. So it starts to feel more hollow, more like a waste of time, because the actions that I do aren't necessarily tied to any meaningful effects other than numbers going up. Now, maybe I get a piece of gear that's more powerful than what I had before, and sure, that could be nice, but is it really enough when you compare it to open world sandboxes that give you so much liberty to just explore and craft and create? And what's amazing with a game like Valheim is, even if you don't do anything particularly epic in the game, you can still say, look at this which I've created. Like this little home I've made in the wilderness, it's not very much, but it's something. It's something that I made that another player wouldn't have made in that spot the way I did it. It's a unique creation. And that's, to me, I think what I've continued to come back to as I think about how I want to prioritize my time and what I really get a sense of value out of in life. Creative sandboxes that give me the liberty to truly define what sort of experience I have. Things that let me do something that I'll have to show for when I'm done. Imagine if you were going to go out and do a project, but when you were done with your work, there wasn't actually anything that you could show anyone and say, this is what I did. Well, you might get satisfaction out of just the doing, but wouldn't you maybe get more satisfaction if you could say, this is what I did, this is what I built, this is what I've created? And we get that out of sandbox games, but we don't get that out of competitive games. We don't get that out of MMOs. In these games that are massively multiplayer, competitive games, MMOs, it all boils down to numbers going up. And the more you think about it, the more you realize that numbers going up doesn't really matter. It might seem like it matters because it is a cool gimmick until you realize that numbers can always go up into infinity. And you're never going to inspire anybody by showing them a bigger number. It's the same thing with stuff like careers in life. People think, well, I'm going to impress my neighbors and I'm going to have this amazing legacy because I had a better career or something like that, you know? But then the truth is, it doesn't really work out that way, does it? Doesn't work out that way because ultimately it is just more numbers going up, you know? And numbers going up is great until you realize that it doesn't matter. But things that you do that are really fun and interesting and creative, those are kind of timeless. You're never going to have those expire because I'll put it like this. Let's just say that you were going to show a child what you're doing. I'm thinking about myself when I was a child playing computer games and getting excited about them. You know, what would impress a child? Well, you could impress them with something like a SimCity build or something cool that you built with blocks or Legos, or maybe something like this game right here where we build up a base and things like that. That's kind of real in a way because it's something you can show. But would you impress a child by saying, well, I ground up and now I'm a higher level than I was before. I don't have anything to show for it other than just I'm a higher level than I was before, you know? I don't know. I mean, it just is one of those things where it sometimes feels like we attribute an abstract value to things, and the reality is we don't have as good of an experience as we want to believe, you know? Like we trick ourselves, I guess, because it's more convenient that way. And it's, you know, life is filled with these emperor's new clothes kinds of situations where you think that there's value in what you're doing, but the reality is you're just kind of kidding yourself. Because ultimately, it's all just, you know, it's all just a waste of time unless you have something to show for it. something to be able to say, this is the end result and I'm proud of it. So just think about how you spend your time. Like, do you enjoy what you're doing? Do you get some meaningful value out of what you're doing? Or are you sort of convincing yourself that what you're doing matters when in reality you're not really getting very much value out of it at all? Just something to think about. Till next time. Thank you for watching.